Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello everyone, this is Tyler Hart, Director of Admission at Villanova Prep School. I'd like to welcome everyone out there. We're going to be talking about the HSPT results that folks got last month after taking the test. There have been a lot of questions about how do I interpret this performance profile. And I want this to be interactive, and that means that we want you to ask your questions. Notice at the top of the screen we have part of the Google Slides presentation, goo.gl/slides/ a whole bunch of characters. That'll take you to an opportunity, a Q&A forum, that will certainly be concluding this session, answering your questions. I have been on the phone with quite a few families, and over the years I've certainly gained a pretty good understanding of the test results, and I'd like to share some of that knowledge with you today. And so here we are, about ready to begin. Hopefully, for the families that took the results, you have those in front of you. If you don't, that's okay, because I'll be highlighting and referencing really essentially the four aspects of the performance profile. There it is. It's a white and red piece of paper with a whole bunch of numbers on it. And at first glance, it's overwhelming. It truly is. But today, we're really going to focus on four areas. And here they are. Percentile and stay 9, cognitive skills quotient, the CSQ, grade equivalencies, and specific skills. So first off, recognizing that on the performance profile, you really do have your major test areas. And those 5 sections are split up into 2 categories. You have your cognitive skills right here, as well as your basic skills just this way. And essentially, there we go. Cognitive skills assess ability. And what's the difference between ability, whereas basic skills assess the achievement? Truly that is the nature versus nurture argument that has lasted not only through the decades, but truly the centuries. The ability of the student could be more of the nature when you're talking about, the brilliance that some students encounter, even from day 1, year 2, and it's quite observable. The achievement is really based on the set of knowledge that a student has attained through their education. And so this is really kind of the nurturing process that takes place not only in the home, but probably more formally, truly within the school and education. But moving right along, if we're talking about this performance profile, then there certainly are a number of categories and particular numbers that matter more. For example, today we're going to be talking first and foremost about percentile and stay 9. And I've highlighted those aspects within the green boxes. Now recognize here, before I go any further, that there is a difference between the local percentile and the national percentile. We look at the national percentile, and that is indeed normed over 3 years worth of results of students taking the HSPT truly across the nation. When you're looking at the local percentile, you are comparing yourself essentially against the students who took the test on that very same day. So here at Villanova Prep School, we did have a solid number of students take the exam, and so now this student has a little bit of an understanding in terms of where they fall compared to, well, really the other applicants in the pool for this admission season as we look to enroll our class of 2021. Now, national percentile. What exactly is percentile? A lot of people are confused, and they oftentimes will reference percent and percentile as being very similar. And in fact, it's quite different. I like to use this sentence right here in terms of kind of giving people an understanding of what percentile means. And this is in its most basic form. So percentile, you can never be in the 100th percentile, because indeed you, the test taker, are one of the 100 people in a room. Another way of saying that is it's you and 99 others. And so essentially when you're coming down to percentile, where do you land? How many people did you perform better than? if you perform in the 50th percentile, then you are right smack in the middle, in that you performed better than 50 people, then there's you, and then there's 49 people who did better than you. And 50 plus 1 plus 49 equals those 100 people. The results actually show the national percentile. So for example, this student right here, we're going to call him Charlie. Charlie, on the cognitive skills verbal section, scored in the 62nd percentile, which of course, because that is above the 50th percentile, is a little bit above average, a little bit more, just above average, not quite in the stated above average category, but truly, outperformed 62 of the 100 or the 99 others in the room. But then you see 62-6, and that -6 refers to stay-9. Stay-9 was conceived within the military, and it's short. Stay-9 is short for Standard 9. So essentially, instead of comparing yourselves to 1 through 99 on the percentile, you're just shortening that up. I mean, you can divide it by 10 if you want. It's not that clean cut, but 1 through 4 is below average, 5 through 6 is average, and 7 through 9 is above average. So there certainly is a correlation between, and especially as you see down here, the national percentile rankings between the 1, the 5, the 10, the 20th percentile, all the way up to the 99th percentile. And then just below that, you see the national stay-9 ranking. So of course, the 5 correlates with the 50, as you see right here, but it's not necessarily true that the 40th percentile compares to the 4th stay-9. It's all about statistics and standard deviations. Don't worry about all that big stuff. At Villanova Prep, we do indeed offer a merit scholarship attached to our national percentiles. And so if we take a look at the national percentile, you see the different categories. We have 62 for national percentile verbal, 97th. This student, Charlie, just knocked the quantitative section out of the park. He did great. When you look at the other 3 sections, a 57, a 95, math is certainly his strong point, an 81, 81st percentile in language. The composite score is your overall national percentile. So truly, if you were going to boil down this test to one number, one percentile, then it would be that 85. And so if people are asking in conversation, how'd you do on the HSPT? Oh, I got an 85, I got a 47, I got a 99. That's what we're talking about with that percentile. If you land in the 99th percentile, then our day tuition this year is $20,000. So we do have, we actually, just in this recent test, there were 2 merit scholars. One student scored in the 99th percentile, and another student scored in the 97th percentile. And so we did already, give the great phone call of congratulations and the wonderful letter from our headmaster saying, hey, we haven't talked about acceptance yet, but should you be accepted to Villanova and decide to attend, then indeed you have this great scholarship that lasts 4 years, 3 or 4 years of education at Villanova. Moving right along. What is the CSQ, the Cognitive Skills Quotient? And let me actually just back off for a moment. There we go. Cognitive skills quotient can really be referenced similar to an IQ. That was certainly STS, who are really the makers and owners of HSPT. They really wanted the CSQ to be as closely aligned to IQ as possible. And so students, if you score, we're really looking at Villanova, if you score above 100, then that certainly recognizes that you land in the 50th percentile or above. We often see students from 110 to 120. We see it creeping up to 127. The highest that I personally have ever seen is 137. And if you're above 130, as you can see, you are landing in the upper 3rd percentile of the school population. Now, as much as you might imagine, truly there is a little, that cognitive skills quotient can be found on the performance profile. And that actually does take the student's age into consideration. So you see here, this student, Charlie, He is 14 years old and 1 month. He is in his first month of his 14th year here on Mother Earth, and that matters. That actually is part of the calculation into the CSQ, because as you know, as we all know, the older you get, the more your brain develops, and cognitively, the more mature that you become. So this student scored 119. That is solid. That is just, that's fantastic. Looking at, let's see here. Yeah, 119, certainly in the above the 25th percentile, or lands in the 25th percentile, the upper quartile. And that really, that makes sense because he scored in the 85th percentile nationwide overall on the composite score. So absolutely, there is a correlation. And now let's talk about grade equivalencies. So direct your attention to the performance profile, and right there you got the wonderful green mark. GE stands for grade equivalency. Now I'll go back to this slide in just a moment, but I do want you to really understand grade equivalency. So often when our children are growing, we're quite ready to boast about their confidence. And so often folks will say, my son is reading at the 10th grade level, or our little 3rd grader, Charlie's only in the 3rd grade, but he's already reading at the 6th grade reading level. He's really caught on. And that's all great and well and good. In the back of an elementary book, it will say what the appropriate grade level is, and that's oftentimes the fodder that parents will then boast to each other. But the grade equivalency within the HSPT is different because the HSPT is an 8th grade level test. And so it's truly, as if Charlie performed on this exam as if a 10th grader or an 11th grader or a 9th grader would have on an 8th grade level test. So, imagine yourself sitting down and taking a test that is at the 5th or 6th grade level. One would think that you would finish it faster and more accurately than a 5th grader would in learning that material for the first time. And so looking at this, it really is a confidence indicator. One thing that's interesting about the HSPT compared to many other exams is the simple fact that there is a lot of problems for students to conquer in a very short amount of time. I believe the verbal section is something like 45 questions in a matter of 18 minutes. So you really do have to hit the ground running. And students are certainly, if they don't finish the section, then that can only work against them. The way that the HSPT is scored is you either get 1 point for answering it correctly, or you get no points, whether you leave it blank or you answer it incorrectly. And with the SAT, we all know that it's a little bit more of a sophisticated test, for example. So if you answer it incorrectly, you actually, they deduct 1/4 of a point or something to that effect on your overall score, so as to really discourage someone from guessing and just filling in all of the answers. The HSPT is not that way. It's truly, did you get it right, 1 point, or did you not get it right, 0 points. So to leave problems blank is not a good thing. Notice we already talked about Charlie and his math strengths. He scored as if an 11th grader in their 2nd month of the school year would have scored on this 8th grade level material. And you think about the math that an 8th grader is doing or should know. Certainly we're talking about basic skills, so that's everything that the student should have learned by the time that they are in 8th grade. And then having an 11th grader who has had 9th and 10th and now the beginning of 11th grade to really not only utilize the skills that they acquired in 8th grade, but then build from that and just have a deeper knowledge and understanding of where is this math taking me? What's next? What's around the next corner? So truly 8th grade level math should be second nature to an 11th grader. And that means that Charlie did great. And as you can see, he really did score in the, in the 95th percentile nationwide. Now, notice that the local, just for a moment, The 90th is only the 90th percentile. Now, I don't want to take anything away from a 90. 90 is fantastic. But that does indicate that the students at Villanova who were taking that test the same morning as Charlie, we have some pretty good math students in that particular group because his score did go down when you compare that. Let's see here. Now moving right along. So direct your attention to the lower portion of that performance profile and you will see the specific skills category. Now specific skills really do have to do with those 5 sections. Indeed, reading and language were the two the first 2 sections in the cognitive skills area, and then verbal quantitative mathematics were in the achievement. And what's fantastic is notice that they've kind of taken not only within the comprehension and the vocabulary sections. Let me switch this out real quick. There we go. Now you can see the full thing. Within the reading section, there are topics and then subcategories and even more subcategories beyond that. So you have topics, categories, and then it just digs deeper and deeper. So of the, let's see here, of the, 62 problems that had to do within the reading section, 30 of them, 40 were comprehension and 22 had to do with vocabulary. Within the comprehension section, 30 of those 40 had to do with informational text. And then within informational text, those 30, that would be adding up 5 plus 5 plus 1 plus 4 plus these down here. So it really just dives deeper and deeper. What am I going to do with this? Well, if you were going to take the HSPT again and you really wanted to focus on areas for improvement, notice right here that compare and contrast. Charlie, there were 3 problems that assessed his abilities within the compare and contrast category. He didn't get any of those right. And that was his only low mark compared to the below average, the above average, and the high that he scored pretty much everywhere else. And so notice that you really do want to take the specific skills category and use that list and go by section to really identify your strengths, but more importantly, you want to identify your areas of growth. And it is those areas of growth that if you do spend time, let's see here, if you do spend time with your if you get a tutor and you spend maybe an hour or so, some people are doing a tutor like an hour a week, that potential areas of growth, that's where you're going to want to focus. Now, don't neglect your strengths, don't neglect your above average areas, but spend less time, certainly, on while studying or preparing for this test. You should certainly devote more attention, not all, but more of your attention toward those potential areas of growth. Let's see here. Now, moving right along. So there's what I mentioned, the compare and contrast. That is certainly one example of where Charlie certainly should improve, because he didn't get any right on the out of those 3. Now let's move on to the more interactive. There are questions, and I see a number of questions have come in. Here we go. Let's go ahead and move on to our questions section. If you haven't already, notice that there is a link at the top. Unfortunately, it's not clickable, so you are going to have to click that in. I think I did put that in the YouTube notes, so you should be able to click on that within. But you know what? It looks like, that one's definitely not right. Don't use this one. Use this one. I'm going to get off this screen because that is just incorrect. That one's correct. There we go. Okay, so let's start off with one question in particular. What is the average HSPT score percentile? Good question. And I think there's 2 answers depending on kind of the context or what this individual meant. So first off, if you're talking about national percentile, then the average should be in the 50th percentile. If you are asking more along the lines of Villanova and the freshman class that's incoming, for the past 3 years we have averaged for our incoming freshman class an HSPT percentile around the 75th percentile. Now the median is something that I realized that I need to revisit. Those numbers have escaped me. I've focused more on the average of recently. So it's not fair for me to say that, well, that means that half of our students are above the 75th percentile and half are below the 75th percentile. We don't post a minimum score for percentile, but I can say I do have conversations with families who are worried. And, there is more concern if the student is below the 50th percentile, but I would say that that's an individual conversation because a test score is one aspect of the admission process. When you look at the teacher recommendations, the grades, and so often families or parents wonder, well, my student's getting straight A's. Why did they score in the 35th percentile? And that's a conversation I would love to have. So give me a call, 805-646-1464. Ask for Tyler. Let's see here. Oh, there's a good one. How do we decide whether our child should retake the test? I think that's a conversation that you need to have with your son or daughter. How did they feel that they performed? Did they leave problems blank? Is it just a matter of perhaps academic endurance? Just the simple fact that they're taking the exam a second time, they already are familiar. If they're taking it at the same, if they come to Villanova again, then the proctor will likely be the same, the classroom will very likely be the same, and the simple fact that they now know there are 5 sections, they know what to expect, they know what's around the next corner, that really does help to alleviate some of the concerns and stress that students are facing in a high-pressure situation. In terms of what score, if they scored above the 50th percentile, or certainly above the 60th percentile, then, and the student says, you know what, I answered every question that I could, I didn't leave any blank, I really, left it all out there on the field, Mom, I don't want to take that test again, then fine. In the 60th percentile and above, check that box and move on. It's more important for the student to really devote time and energy toward their 8th grade year, toward meaningful activities. We are looking for students who add value to our school community. The test score is not the best way. Now, if you're in the 99th percentile, then of course, if you're in the 94th percentile, you may have a shot, and I would certainly encourage a student to try and take that again. But, it's really up to the student, truly. Let's see here. Here's a question. Do students that retake the HSPT tend to perform better? For the most part, yeah. I have tales of 97th percentile merit scholar who got, 97th percentile is 25% off scholarship, and they tried to take it again because, bumping from a 97 to a 98 is bumping from a quarter off to 1/3 off, or from a 97 to a 99. Now we're talking from a quarter to a half. And indeed, that student took it again and scored the 97th percentile again. So a 97 to a 97. The higher you up are, the higher up the ladder you are in terms of percentile, the more difficult it is to climb further up that ladder. It's just kind of like that bell curve, and the farther you get out there, the more difficult it is truly to make progress. But then I have had students jump from the 41st percentile to the 63rd percentile. And I think that truly just was a student taking the exam cold turkey, no prep, oblivious to the fact that they had to work at a pretty rapid pace in order to finish the exam, and then buckling down from those 2 months from taking it in November to retaking it again in January, And there you go, great progress. So jumping over 20 percentile points simply because of the devotion and the understanding and the seriousness involved. So yeah, I would say that the strong majority of students perform better. Very rarely do I even see a student dip, but I would say that's a student maybe in the 75th percentile, drop into the 71st percentile. And that means they tried as hard as they could the first time, and they tried as hard as they could the second time, but realize that this exam is occurring on some random Saturday morning, for example, in the month of November or January. And that's just how that student performed. It's a snapshot on that particular Saturday morning. Let's see here. Other questions? Ooh! So to that point, if you take the exam in November and you score in the 43rd percentile or 41st percentile, and then you retake it and you score in the 63rd, do we look at both? Well, we're certainly aware of both, and both exams do exist within your file, but we really only consider the high score. In terms of our database, we only got one spot for the test scores, and so we do only put in the higher, but it helps us. For us, it's the more the merrier in terms of the information we know about your student. And a poor showing with followed up with a strong showing, of course, we're going to see that redemption, and we're going to acknowledge that the student buckled down and certainly has the potential. It's certainly a learning opportunity, to be sure. Now, in terms of, well, if my student will be retaking this, are there particular books or materials that we recommend? No, not in particular. We have scoured for something that's better than something else, and they're very, very similar, and so there isn't really one that stands out above the pack. I can point you in two directions. The free version would be simply Googling HSPT sample problems, and you will come across, I think there's one website called Study Guide Zone, and you'll come up with about 40 different sample problems. But for example, at Villanova, we offer the HSPT and the SSAT. And in looking at the sample problems that exist for each of those tests, they're identical, and yet those tests are not identical. But those problems, you can use them in a fashion that will perhaps help you with the way that the HSPT is structured. Talking again about the simple fact that the HSPT matters in terms of how far you get in the exam and the pace that you go. Speaking to the confidence of the material, the more confident you are, the faster that you should get it done. Take that group of 40 sample problems and split them up into 10 and try to knock out as correctly as possible those 10 as fast as you can. Time yourself. Get up, get a drink of water, come back down, shake it out, and knock out the next 10 as fast as you can. And not only try to beat your time, but also ensure that you are trying to do these as accurately as possible. If you go to Barnes & Noble, you will see maybe 5 different books, whether it's Princeton Review, Kaplan, Test Prep for Dummies. They typically do bundle about 3 exams into a book that may cost between $20 to $25. It's the size of a dictionary, and it'll bundle maybe the HSPT with the SSAT or the ISEE or the New York entrance exam. I forget which one that one's called. In California, we don't see that one too often. But there are at least 2 sections of sample problems for each of those tests. And to do as many sample problems as possible just kind of gets you into that rhythm in terms of the standardized method of filling in the bubbles and all that kind of jazz. So that's about as much as I have to say in terms of test prep. There are tutors who cost anywhere between $40 and $140 an hour. And I would use that time certainly wisely. I would do my own test prep before connecting with a tutor who may certainly have outstanding resources to point you in the right direction toward as well. Another question. Do students need to retake the HSPT at the same school? No. The HSPT, the high school placement test, is pretty much the entrance exam for every Catholic high school in the U.S. And if you take the HSPT at another high school, all you have to do is follow up with an email because we need the written authorization to release the scores, and just copy both of those high schools into that same email. For example, if there is a student who wants to send these HSPT scores to another school that they're applying, then just email me. Hey, Mr. Hart, could you forward Charlie's HSPT scores over to fill in the blank school? And do copy both me and that director of admission. And as soon as I have them, we send them. We'll scan and email them over, but it is helpful to have that written authorization. Picking up the phone and making that ask, we'll just say, sure, send us an email, because we need to have that written authorization. It should be that simple. The reason why I say do copy both schools on that is sometimes we need that reminder, that gentle reminder. And I may need to call that school and say, hey, I haven't gotten Susie's test scores yet. Could you send them over? The parents sent an email a couple of months ago, and we need them. We need them now. And send that, then we're able to resend that email over and then have them either scan and send or fax or what have you. Ooh, good question. Is there a separate application I need to complete if my child scores in the top percentiles to receive the Merit Scholarship Award? No. The standard admission application is certainly acceptable. The Merit Scholarship is automatic. Like I said, we had 2 Merit Scholars in November, and so we picked up the phone that very same afternoon that we got the scores. Said congratulations, go get some ice cream to celebrate, and then we followed up with a formal letter from our headmaster, essentially saying, we really, really, really want to get you this Merit Scholarship, so make sure that you finish your application and finish the admission process. We look forward to connecting with you during the interview, but officially we cannot send acceptance letters until the first Friday of March. That is what the LA Archdiocese has strongly suggested and that we abide by. So no, it's automatic. Now recognize that all scholarships at Villanova are dependent on the student's academic success, maintaining good academic and behavioral standards. So we want your student to maintain that scholarship over the course of the 4 years, and I'm sure that you do too. So as long as the student maintains a solid course, both academically and behaviorally, then that Merit Scholarship is automatic. And recognize that should there be a tuition increase, which does happen every year, simply with the cost of living rising, and we like to give our teachers a little bit of a raise every year, then so too will the amount of that scholarship in order to continue to cover the 25% of tuition or 33% of tuition or 50% of tuition. And ooh, do you prefer the HSPT over the SSAT? I am not going to answer that question. I don't play favorites with my 2 sons, and I'm not going to play favorites with these 2 tests. I would absolutely say that they both have strengths and areas of growth, but I would say, for example, the SSAT, there is a writing prompt that is not scored, but is passed along with the results, and it's authentic. It's an opportunity for us to see what that student was able to come up with a prompt that they'd never seen before, and you see all the chicken scratch and what they cross out, and the misspellings and the grammar and the structure of how they present their thoughts and ideas and organize and organize those along for presentation. Some of them start with a little outline and then go from there. Others just freewheel it and fill up a couple of pages. Some only write 2 paragraphs. And the authenticity of that is one of the reasons why we, for our own writing sample, got away from typing the online student writing sample and going back to the handwritten form. Even if you try to go clean and on the PDF type it in, we still email you back and say, hey, this is great, thank you very much. We like your answers, but we want to see it handwritten. Because there's something that's just more authentic and does indeed illustrate that an 8th grader wrote those answers, and that it's not so polished, and that you didn't click on the red squiggly line to indicate a misspelling and things like that. So that's one of the great benefits that we see with the SSAT. Truly those 2 tests are so unique simply because the HSPT, like I said, it's an entrance exam for Catholic high schools throughout the U.S., which cover a greater range of kind of the quality of student that is going on to a Catholic high school. Whereas the SSAT is for prep schools, for independent schools. And so the echelon of students who are going to be studying within an independent school is going to be higher and therefore more competitive. We see the HSPT as the entrance exam for our day students, and the SSAT as the entrance exam for our boarding students. Because the SSAT is available throughout the world, not to mention the US, and it's 2 different tests, very difficult to really compare, but we do have our kind of internal benchmarks for each in terms of what we like to see and what we're really impressed with. So that looks to be about it in terms of all of the questions. And so I'm going to conclude with one last question. I hope you're looking forward to Christmas break. Thank you very much for joining me today. If you do have any other questions, you can absolutely email me at thart@villanovaprep.org. I should have had that in the show notes. Rookie mistake. But thank you very much for joining. And Villanova Prep School, Ojai, California. California's only boarding school that offers the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program, and a Catholic school in the Augustinian tradition. Only one of 9 Augustinian Catholic high schools in North America. And if you want to learn more, you can visit us at www.villanovaprep.org. Thank you very much for joining. Have a great day.